Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Limitless Experience. And thank you for tuning in. This is the episode 2 of the TechPod series that we have started, where we are going to talk about tech news, the upcoming devices that are going to get launched, tech rumors, the leaks, and all these things. This episode has especially been a learning curve for me because it has made me feel like a child again, a college student again, and actually, I have enjoyed this podcast thoroughly. So please watch, and if you like the work that we are doing in here in the Limitless Experience, please give this video a like, and also don't forget to comment all the topics and all the things that you want us to cover on the next episode of the podcast. We'll be waiting for your comments, and also we are going to take up those comments in the next episode of the podcast. Sir, welcome
Hello,
back.
Akash. Thank you for bringing me
Yeah,
this here.
now that we are now that we are recording for the second consecutive time for this tech podcast, I realized one thing, that consistency in YouTube matters, and consistency in anything in life matters, and that's what we are trying to do, right? As creators and as tech podcasters, that is what we are trying to do, and that is what we are trying to create. Okay. Uh, so I am happy that we, as promised, we are going to release the second episode just after 14 days of the first, and that we are being consistent at least for now. And I am actually hopeful that many more will come
Yes.
in time without delays. तू बोल इस पे बोलने वाला
No
नहीं है
comments
क्या
on
तू?
this. No, seriously, but consistency actually matters a lot, and not only for people but also for the social media algorithm. And the more you post, the more likely it is for your videos to reach more people. And so we want our content to reach you guys, and we want to expand our knowledge and also help you guys make better purchase decisions, and also for tech enthusiasts, just for fun. We will continue this podcast as promised.
Yeah, yeah, and we are trying our best to do that.
Waking up early on Saturday mornings.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So what we are going to start with is, recently what YouTube has done. They have put a post on their ad website, where they put their news post and told that they'll be removing the dislike counts. You can anyway dislike the video if you want, not this one, in general. uh, but YouTube won't be showing the number of dislikes that you have on a particular video. It will be visible only for the creators, only for the uploaders, but not for general public. So as a small content creator, as small YouTubers, as we have a growing channel, what is your take on that? Is it the right thing to do?
Yeah, I think based on the trolls that happen, usually on the videos that get boosted up, so I think this is a good thing in a way because see what happens is that if you see even Justin Bieber's songs that went viral years ago, there are
Yeah,
more
yeah.
dislikes and all that to that. So what happens is that for big artists it is fine, but for small content creators, what happens is that when new viewers come in to watch their videos, immediately when they see that dislike count, they get this vibe that they should just go away from this video, and it's not that helpful probably because they know that people have voted this down, and so it like discourages them. So this also is a bad thing for them because they might have gotten some knowledge which they are missing out on. So it is it's a good thing in a way, and also it's a good thing that still content creators can see that count, because as a beginner content creator myself, I really understand the importance of that dislike count. Whenever I see that dislike count on my videos, I the first thing I notice is that okay, my videos are reaching to that much audience first of all. So like dislike is the second thing. First of all, people are watching those videos, so that's a good thing in a way. And the second,
And one more thing I would like to add, that people are taking their time. People are actually dedicating their time to
react.
react to that video, either liking or disliking. What happens is, most of the time, even I do the same. That I watch a video, and I just move on to the next
Hmm.
video. Once it gets completed, I move on to the next video. But actually taking out time, be it 1 second or 3 seconds, but taking that time and reacting, either liking or disliking that video, it actually means that people are interested or not at all interested in your video.
Right.
It shows.
Right. And also, it also shows that the content or the topics that you are working on actually make some difference to some people. And this really encourages
Yeah.
you that, okay, if it's okay if people have disliked it, I can improve on the quality now. But it means that I'm going on the right direction. So it gives a sense of direction to new content creators.
When we talk about small content creators like us, we as we both are small time creators, but it actually is helpful for us. But what about the big organizations and big companies? We can say we recently saw a massive a number of the number of dislikes actually surpassed the number of likes in many of the recent trailers of the movies, of Hindi movies, the music videos. It happens everywhere. Will it be helpful for general audience to decide whether to watch a particular video or not? Not for us, because we are small time creators, but if we talk about big creators, big uploaders, big people like celebrities.
Well, honestly, I don't think it will matter a lot for them. Because, see, if you are a big content creator, you have already built up your fan base. So,
Yeah.
whether whatever video you post, people are going to watch it, and that like dislike count or anything would not affect at all. Okay, the watch time might get reduced if they are not interested in that video, but still that fan base is there, so it might not make much of a difference for big content creators.
Okay, that's fair. And one more thing, YouTube has told that none of the other video uploading or content website like TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, and none of them have like a dislike button. They just have like or react button, and they don't have a dislike button. So I don't think that YouTube should be competing or try to compete with those, because YouTube in itself is a search engine just like Google, and YouTube is a platform which is especially built on the principle of long uh, content, not just not just limiting itself to a 60-second video or a 30-second video or something like that. People come on YouTube to watch long form of videos. It is been changing with YouTube Shorts. That is a topic for another podcast.
YouTube is going in a really other direction, just like it's becoming Instagram now, with stories, with posts, and with different promotions. Everything is the same thing now. I don't see much of a difference. Oh, okay, there is one thing that we also get big videos like this one, like podcasts and really informative videos also. But it's slowly and slowly becoming like all other social media platforms.
YouTube should keep it this way. If they are trying to introduce new features like YouTube Shorts or Stories, anything like that, that the competitor has, but they should always focus on the long range format more, because people come to YouTube. They don't invest as much time on Facebook as they do on YouTube, right?
But the last time I checked, the YouTube algorithm actually favors shorts, stories, the posts you make, and the people that comment on those posts as well. So I think what YouTube is trying to focus on is just audience engagement, just like any other social media platform.
Reaching out to as many people as possible, and reaching out and showing them more content in short span of time.
But the essence won't go away, I guess, because still large videos would be there, and I think YouTube has all sorts of things now. So I think it's like a one-stop thing for all kinds of info that you can get.
Yeah.
Yeah, people, I think, especially even me, instead of going to typing on Google first, I check on YouTube. If someone has made some informative video about it already, then it helps more than reading a text.
Yeah, actually. And watching people do that is far much engaging and far much as a learning curve. It is far much informative than just reading the steps and following the steps.
Right. Yeah.
It actually helps being on YouTube and searching on anything on YouTube first than googling it, maybe.
Right. So first there was text, then went WikiHow with pictures, and then came YouTube. So it's a good engagement thing. So I think YouTube is not going in the wrong direction. I think it's doing the right thing by taking such decisions of adding new features for more audience engagement. So it also helps content creators like us also to reach more audience. The different case is that it only matters when you have more than 1,000 subscribers, but still it does.
Yeah, still we can be hopeful and we can start doing shorts.
Right, I do that a lot. Nowadays I'm doing just shorts, music videos. Yeah, go and check out my channel. A lot of music covers I have done there.
Music covers, and also we should try to promote this tech podcast as much as
Tech pod.
possible on YouTube Shorts, so that people come here and subscribe to us. So next topic, one of the most interesting one and one of the most awaited ones is Qualcomm Snapdragon 898 5G processor. It's a very long name. As per rumors, it is going to be launched on November 30th, I guess. Qualcomm has an event just like WWDC and Google I/O event, which happens in a span of 3 days. On the first day, on 30th of November, Qualcomm is going to launch Snapdragon 898 5G processor. So, what are your expectations of that?
First of all, as any other tech reviewer, I first of all went through to see if there are any stats about it, like Geekbench stats and all. So I found this that there is not much of a difference between that and the 888 Plus processor. So I think, especially in the Android world, what has happened is that features have come out, but the processors are not that powerful to consistently support them smoothly. For example, just consider like night modes and consider high refresh rate.
Yeah.
All these things are there even in the lowest end phones, but the processors are not at that end that they support that flawlessly. And that I think that is something there consistently in the Android world to say. So I think what Qualcomm and MediaTek and other such these manufacturing chips, what they are doing is that every year they are making incremental upgrades. So even though, so actually 888 was the most exciting one because it promised a lot of improvements. But yeah, it is the one of the most powerful chipsets around still. But still, I think 898 is just like an incremental upgrade over the 888 and even the 888 Plus. So it's honestly it's not that exciting this year for Qualcomm, I would say, and especially if you are waiting on the next year's flagship with the 898, and if you're not a heavy user to say, then I don't think you should even wait. I mean, 888 and all the latest flagships that have those chipsets are powerful enough for an average consumer.
I think all the latest flagship phones that are going to get released, like Samsung's next S series and Note series phones, OnePlus 10, 10 Pro maybe, Xiaomi phones, Huawei phone, will they have Qualcomm processor? I'm not sure about, but the other Android manufacturers will have. The only exception is Google, because now they have tensor chip. Initially there was Qualcomm who was actually having majority of the users using their Snapdragon processor. Then in 2010 Apple came into picture, with their processor, and since then only there are two companies who actually build processors. First is Qualcomm and major companies, and other one is Apple. Now the Google has arrived with their tensor chip, and that is the in-house designed chip. Okay, what will be changed in smartphone landscape with the arrival of Google Tensor? Because if Google has arrived with its in-house designed chip, then Samsung anyway has Exynos processors which they manufacture. I think Huawei has MediaTek processors,
Hmm.
and now Qualcomm need to speed up their process and make their chips faster and faster, so that the other manufacturers should will be able to opt for a better chip, which will be theirs, not their in-house chips. So will the arrival of tensor chip disrupt this market?
See, the thing is that tensor chip is only on Google phones, not any other phone. And the thing is that what makes this better for Google phones is the efficiency and fluidity of Google services. So Google services are there on almost all Android phones, even iPhones to say. But the thing is that it will be more fluid and more efficient on Google flagships. But the thing is that still the consumers that are using Google services, I mean, it's the market is widespread and everybody, almost everybody are using Google services, Google Drive, Gmail, and Google Photos also for editing and storing their photos and videos. So with the arrival of the Tensor chip, definitely it will give an advantage to Google phones, but I don't think it would affect the smartphone market to say, because people will still keep using the Google services, and uh, Snapdragon chipsets are also very powerful, and they also are becoming more battery efficient. So if you're using Google Maps, then if you have the latest processor, it is more power efficient and it uses less data also. It is optimized really well. So I don't think that is much of a difference in them.
But as we have heard, and even Microsoft and Samsung, they have announced that they will be working on their in-house chips to put in their smartphones. What will this result into for Intel and Snapdragon if each and every smartphone or a laptop making company try and plan to design their own chips?
I think Qualcomm will also bring out their own phones and laptops, their own processors, because yes, yeah, definitely. When other manufacturers will bring out their own chips, and they will have better performance also, because they will be able to optimize their devices well, be it a laptop,
Yeah.
tablet, or phone. So yeah, I think Qualcomm would need to do something special to say in order to compete with those, at least in the future. Probably in the next couple of years, Qualcomm isn't going away, and still it's highly unlikely that many manufacturing companies will like create their own chips. But yeah, in the long run, Qualcomm does need to do something special instead of doing just incremental upgrades each year that they do.
Yeah, that's correct. We spoke about Samsung Galaxy devices,
Hmm.
and the new Samsung Galaxy S series phone is going to be launched early next year in the first quarter, I guess. We have some leaked images, some rumors, and what kind of processor it will be using Snapdragon 898 in anyway
Hmm.
in the US variant, and in other parts of the world it will use an Exynos chip that is designed in house. Speaking about the cameras, it will have, I guess, four cameras, and it will have those camera bumps. Looking at those leaked images, what were your initial thoughts about S22?
Okay, so first of all, that camera array, that is a P-shaped array, I guess, and
Yeah.
it does not. It looks kind of a. Looks a bit of weird, I would say, because last year with the S21 Ultra, that camera bump that merged with the phone's body, it looked amazing. It looked neat. It looked clean.
Actually, I went to a Samsung store and I felt that phone in my hand.
Hmm.
The feeling was amazing to hold that, because it would just blend in side rail of the phone.
Right. Yeah. And also, I think I just looked at the sizes of the S22 devices, and I think Samsung is trying to mimic Apple again with a mini S22, because the S22 normal S22, which will be launched, would be of a smaller screen size. So it will almost be like the competition for iPhone 13 mini,
Okay.
and it will also have a smaller battery, but I think they are doing some software optimizations so that it will last the same like last year's devices.
So, will it mean that these S22 devices will be thicker to accommodate more battery or internal components to make it a better device?
No, the as far as I have seen the leaks, they are making their devices smaller, as I mentioned, and that's why the battery is also smaller. And so that's it. They are not making it thicker or anything, just like iPhones did this year. I mean, Apple did their iPhones a bit thicker to accommodate for more battery, right?
Yeah.
Physical battery, actually. But I don't see Samsung doing anything like that. I think they're trying to work with the software itself to make camera improvements and also battery improvements, but nothing that exciting, I would say, this year, because when the S20 Ultra launched, they put the zoom and all those features,
Mhm.
but now it's become like a common thing these days.
You were a Samsung Galaxy user. What phone did you have?
The S20 Ultra.
Okay, S20 Ultra. I was trying to understand the naming convention Samsung follows. Okay,
Hmm.
firstly we had Samsung Galaxy S, then S2, S3, S4 till Galaxy S10. Then they jumped from S10 to S20. Now 21, 22 is 21 had released the last year, and 22 is going to get released next year. What's up with their naming conventions? I mean,
Yeah, I think they are going as simple as they can go, just matching with the year.
oh, are they?
Yes. So the reason that, at least as far as I know, that Samsung is renamed their entire range of devices to match with the release year.
Okay.
So like the S20 release in the 2020, then 2021 S21, then 2022 S20. So it's like easy to relate on in which year this phone was launched, and it makes it very simple for the naming convention of their models, because previously it was a bit difficult. And even with iPhones, if you see iPhone 13, so like nobody would, I mean, it will be difficult, at least for a person who's not much in touch with tech. At least for that person, it will be difficult to understand which one was launched when and which is the latest one. Is the iPhone 13, 14? But Samsung did this to make it really simple, like S20 2020 model, S22, which model will get this the next year, S22, next year S23, like that. It's simple.
That was very well put, actually. This thought didn't click actually for me because I was thinking about why did they skip the whole 10 series after S10. They went to
So not everything Samsung does is a copy of Apple. This is something new and original that they did.
I guess Apple just skipped only one number. That was 9, iPhone 9.
Nine.
There's no such thing as iPhone 9. And if you are getting an ad on eBay or some or OLX that it is an iPhone 9, then you should just run away. So, Zed, what phone do you use currently? Because you have been using many phones since the last 5 years. You had an iPhone SE first generation, then you went to Google Pixel 2 XL, then S20 Ultra. And what phone do you use now?
So currently, since the last 8 months or so, I've been using the iPhone 12, the regular one.
Okay, the regular iPhone 12. And you also had the mini.
Yes, for a short period of time, I did own the Mini, but due to the battery life and the small screen size, I sold it away after just a couple of months or so.
Okay, actually, I was going to ask you this question, but you have also answered it already. I was going to ask you what made you switch from a 12 mini to a regular 12, but I think you have already answered.
Yeah, because see, let me just explain those points a bit. Because the first thing is battery life. I've already made many battery reviews of the iPhone 12 mini, and I've also got a good response on that. I'm glad that it's helping a lot, many people. So the thing about the 12 mini's battery was that initially it was good. It was lasting about a day or so, and I could easily get to the next morning. But there is a certain level of confidence, you get with your new phone, that okay, today it's good. Every phone is good when you buy it, but a couple of months down the line, I don't see it. Especially when I'm traveling with that phone, I don't see that much confidence in that battery life. That I will need to charge it every now and then, and especially if I'm using it on 4G data outside, then it would really take a hit on the battery. So now also I recommend people that if you're thinking of a mini, iPhone 12 mini, 13 mini is a different story altogether. If you're thinking about 12 mini, then do spend the extra and go for the 12, because it does give you that reliability for a couple of years down the line. Because even 12 mini, I did the right thing by selling it away, because the 12 mini reportedly has dropped in battery health a lot. People are reporting battery health as 92% now. So it's really
in just 1 year.
In just 1 year. So which is not at all a good thing. And already the battery size was really less. Battery capacity was really less.
Yeah.
So that is one thing about battery life. And the other thing is about the screen size. You see, many people love compact phones. Even I bought the 12 mini because I wanted a compact phone. But the thing is that, especially if your phone is your business or like your main workhorse, so having that small screen really affects in day-to-day usage, because sometimes what happens is that I don't want to, like, if there is a short reel that I'm doing, Instagram reel, and I just want to edit that quickly. I don't want to like transfer it to my iPad and then like make an issue out of it by editing and then spending hours on that. I just want to edit it quickly. So I would edit it on my phone itself. And believe me, LumaFusion on iPhone 12 mini, it's too cramped. Like The buttons are so small that it becomes difficult to manage. And I mean, the overall experience is not that great with that mini size phone. And also, when it comes to media consumption, I mean, if you're watching content, the text in the like movies or YouTube videos, what you watch, text is so small that you have to literally focus on that to actually, get that immersive experience. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad. You can easily use that and, have a good experience as well, but that it's not that immersive. So I just found that even though that compact size was a plus thing, but in the long run, it's not gonna go that far.
I think what you have just said, you have offended a lot of people. See, it also depends on your usage, how and how much do you use your phone on a day-to-day basis. And now that we are working from home because of the pandemic, and it's about to get over, and now we are going to move back to the offices, and we are going to start our daily commuting from home to office and back. At that time, I think the battery life and the smaller capacity of the battery would actually show. But if your usage is light and you are not actually a creator who use editing softwares on their phones, or try to make a thumbnail, or edit a short reel, or YouTube shorts, then I think it won't affect those as many people. It depends on the usage, but still, actually, even I wanted to get a small phone.
But this is one thing I've been telling my viewers a lot. I've been getting a lot of comments on the 12 mini reviews. People are asking like, bro, I don't have much of a heavy usage. I don't take a lot of photos, videos. I don't play games. Is the 12 mini okay for me? So I'm like, okay, you don't do this today. I mean, are you sure you won't do it tomorrow as well? I mean, if you don't take a lot of photos, videos, but still, if you're buying a new phone, if 1 year later you go on a trip or somewhere and you want to take a lot of photos and videos, you would, right? So what I mean to say is that if you're buying a new phone, make sure it has the capacity to do all those things in the future also. Even though you are not a heavy user now, you don't want to be restricted in the future, right? Just because you bought it when you were not a heavy user. So that's why I always suggest my viewers that don't just assume that this will be enough in the future also. Like if you are using a phone for 1 or 2 years, then it's fine. You can definitely go ahead with that assumption and buy that iPhone 12 mini also. But usually I've seen iPhone users use their phone for really longer years. You yourself, I know that you have used your iPhone 7, right, for so many years. So all those years, if you're using your iPhone 12 mini, then I mean, it's not really recommended, because your usage might change, your life might change. So it's better to have a phone that at least has the capacity to do all the normal things like taking photos or even playing games. If once in a while you feel like playing a heavy game, your phone should not take a hit on the battery, or your phone should not stutter. So do consider those things as well.
Okay, at least for 2 years. At least for 2 years, because
Right.
given the good reputation iPhones have in the market, I think people keep their iPhones at least for 2 years, unless they break.
Yeah, and when it comes to iPhones, it's not you actually the way iPhones are incremented each year. I mean, there are only incremental upgrades, so it makes sense also to not sell off your iPhone so early. You can easily keep on using it. You will get software updates. Your processor will be as fast as it was on the day one. So it makes sense to use iPhones for many years.
My last and one of the most important questions of this podcast: how was your experience using an iPhone 12 from the last 8 months?
Okay. So honestly, after 8 months, I think it has become my daily companion in everything that I do. So when I first bought it, I actually switched from the S21 Ultra, sorry, S20 Ultra naming scheme. I switched from the S20 Ultra to the iPhone 12. So I switched from a 120 hertz refresh rate screen to a 60 hertz screen. So the first things that I felt was that okay, I'm missing out on a high refresh rate screen, and the also I noticed that the Samsung's low light performance was a tad bit better than the iPhone because it had the larger sensor. So
Yeah,
these
yeah.
things I was regretting a bit, but now after a couple of years, I have learned to actually make the best of this iPhone. and it has also gotten smooth with time. I think the machine learning in the Apple's processor is really helping in making my day-to-day activities really easy and smooth. And man, performance is one thing. Performance is like, as I mentioned previously, that I sometimes edit my short videos or reels on my phone. So with the Samsung phone, the phone used to get heated up a lot, and sometimes even rendering a 4K video, it used to crash sometimes.
Okay.
And but with the iPhone, I mean, I can just open LumaFusion, do everything flawlessly, and just put it for exporting, and then just leave it. I don't have to worry about it. So this is one good thing that I am learning about this iPhone is the performance. The performance has been consistent overall. So this is one good thing. And yeah, with the cameras, I really wanted to mention that. See, HDR, I mean, it was a really exciting thing in the beginning because videos were having a lot of clarity, a lot of light, and good range to do color grading and all. The videos taken from
Yeah.
my iPhone. But the thing is that I noticed that it was not perfect. Of course, nothing is, but the way they advertised it, especially in low light, with HDR10 on, videos are more grainier than a normal video
In
in
low
low
light.
light. Yes. And this I showed to the Apple Service Center also, that if it's just my camera sensor or it's with all iPhone 12s. And they compared with another iPhone 12 and they were like, oh, it's there with all the iPhone 12s. Even they did not know. First, they accepted that it's a fault in the phone, that low light image is really grainy and really like stuttery with HDR10 on, of course. But then when they compared with another iPhone 12 which they had, they noticed similar results. So I think HDR10 really needs some software updates, but Apple does not seem to be focusing on that as of yet. They are focusing on ProRes and all those other stuff with the newer iPhones.
Mhm.
So that is one thing that I did not like about this, because that HDR10 was like an exciting point, but it did turn me down a bit. But so normally I do take videos with HDR off, and also with 60. If you turn off HDR and if you put 60 frames per second, see, 60
Mhm.
frames per second generally gives a little poorer low light performance, right? But it's not with this iPhone. It's really great. So even 60 frames per second is better than keeping HDR10 on. So this is one thing that I think Apple should focus on, and like should make some software updates for this.
Okay, I think we should make a dedicated podcast to keep on ranting about Apple devices and
Right,
services,
right.
Apple devices, Apple services, and Apple software that we have. I think we should do one episode, at least one episode for ranting about all the Apple products.
Right, let's do that. I have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, so do I.
And so will
No,
you now using the iPhone
yeah.
13.
How is the battery life? How has the battery performed over the last 8 months?
Yeah, so battery has been really stellar in the beginning, to say, beginning couple of 6 months, battery has been stellar. Like I was not even worried about the battery at all. Like even if I went out somewhere, I would even forget to charge it, and it would still be there. But with the latest iOS 15.1 update, right?
Yeah, wait,
The
15.1.
21. With the latest update, I think something has happened. Either they have done something or something they have missed out. The battery performance has gone down. So recently we had gone out and on a road trip, and then I just noticed that the battery was dropping like anything. Just like if I charge in the morning, by just 4 p.m. it was around 20% or so. So
Okay.
this never happened before on my iPhone 12. So with the latest update, I would say that the battery life has gone down, but I think this can be improved. So Apple should work on it.
This has happened to me as well, but the thing that I can see was when there is no coverage, when there is no network coverage, and then the phones keep on searching for network coverage, it actually uses more battery life
Right,
than usual.
right,
Okay, and if you're traveling by any highway or something like that, most of the times you won't get network in all the time. The network gets on handed off from one tower to another tower, and there are some patches where there are no network towers at all, and you won't get a reception, cellular reception at all. So at that time, not just iPhones, every phone tries to keep on searching for network connectivity, and they don't find it, and they naturally use more battery life than usual.
Yeah, but there must be a software optimization done for this, because everybody can't go out and consciously turn this auto searching option off in their settings. So this there must be something for this, because there are a lot of things on the iPhone 12 and 12 mini also, which I had made a video earlier. There are a lot of tweaks that you can do to increase your battery life. But the thing is that, ultimately it comes to the user experience, that you have to keep in mind to do all those things each time you are going to go out or something. So I think some battery optimizations must be done to automate this kind of an optimization.
Yeah, that can be done, I guess.
Will you do it?
I'll talk to Tim Cook about it.
Hi, Tim Cook.
Phil Schiller, Tim Cook, and every one of the Apple executives. I'll just send them an email and ask them to change
Here
this
at
right away.
Apple, we have listened to Akash Dakat in the tech podcast. We have listened and we have done this. We are proud to announce.
we are proud to announce iOS 16, in which you will never lose network.
Never lose battery, never lose network.
I'll talk to Tim Cook about this.
Calling right now.
So, Zed, on this note, I think we should wrap this episode up. What were your closing thoughts on this?
I think this episode has been a lot more fun than the last episode, and I would tell the audience that it will keep on getting more and more fun from now onwards. So keep watching, subscribe, and also do follow Akash on Spotify's channel.
Yeah, actually, and do subscribe to Zed's channel as well, because he is going to put the iPhone 12 1 year review soon.
Right, the iPhone 12 with the
Are you-
12 mini have come to a really reasonable price on Flipkart, and I think this is
Yeah.
the right time to actually tell my long-term review about this. So I would be making that video really soon.
Okay, and actually, for me, this podcast was a learning curve, because the amount of preparation that you have to have before speaking about tech and before speaking about tech news, you have to research the topics that you are going to discuss, and the things that you are going to talk about. You have to research about them, and it has made me feel like a college student again, because last night I started reading about all the topics that that were there, because we decided to talk about all these things yesterday, and I've read some articles, I've watched videos. Now when the podcast we started recording, I was able to talk about each and everything and give my input as much as possible. So I think this podcast especially has made me feel like a college student all over again.
And you have notes also, I guess, prepared.
Yeah, I have notes. Okay, so on this note, we'll end this episode, and thank you. And if you have made it this far in the video, I would like to request you to like this video and
No
put on
dislike.
no disliking, because we'll get the count and you won't be able to see the count. If you want us to discuss about any of the things, any of the tech related things, just please put down a comment, and we'll definitely talk about it in the next podcast.